Hello, welcome to episode 33 of a Let the Story Write Itself podcast. Today's episode is about the moment when you cannot stay the same. Essentially, when life is calling to you to more and there's really no going back. So it's this pivotal moment where you realize that you've outgrown what you've already been. And it's essentially this stage where you might call it the dark night of the soul, where you go through some experiences and you're no longer thinking or perceiving things the same way, or rather, you're no longer in the same mindset that maybe once allowed you to pull the wool over your eyes, so to speak. Maybe at one point you were willing to turn a blind eye or look the other way, or simply it didn't feel like something that was intolerable. But at some point it becomes intolerable. And this is where your soul is literally pulling you to more. So, in my particular situation, this has occurred time and time again, whether it was this nudge that was pulling me to go to Vipassana, that I had this longing for that deep sense of stillness and that inner knowing, that capacity to go within and to access the inner mind more so than the outside noise. So this was around 2011, 2012, where I then went on a Vipassana meditation retreat for 10 days. Another instance of that is, coming out of university after completing the degree. And at that point, I was like, enough of this. I'm going to just simply do what I feel called to do. And what happened is that it led me to like dozen and more jobs, different experiences within like a very short time period, like 2 years or something. I kind of just went and had so many different job experiences that I never had. And I allowed myself to just flow according to what I felt pulled to. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go and look for a career right now. I'm going to try and work in a job that, is stemming from a place that I was never really called to in the first place. And I essentially was moving more with that sense of play and allowing and accessing that self and that inner being that was coming from beyond my logical mind. So it wasn't just like, oh, I need to go make a living now. Oh, I need to go take like the highest paying job, or I need to go take a job that makes me look like an adult now. It was like, no, I'm like, maybe I want to try being a baker for a bit. Oh, I really like just how laid back it is working in a greenhouse. You know what? Maybe I want to go and try some door to door sales, things of that nature, where I did like over a dozen jobs within a short time of period. I also picked up numerous volunteer opportunities. So I was really just enjoying like numerous extracurricular, like Toastmasters and different meetup groups and like hobby and interests and who knows what. I was just like in so many different things that was just based on what I was feeling pulled to and what I felt called to essentially. So rather than, sticking to, that whole adage that's like, oh, if you stick to the end or whatnot. And I completed the degree, but really, was it worth it though? Or like, what is better to flow with where you feel like going, or to actually stay and complete something that you feel like you're having to force yourself? So it's a little bit of that sense of, yeah, maybe there is something to be said for having that stick to itness. But there's also something to be said by listening to your intuition and that pull and simply flowing where you want to go. Also, I'm like a manifesting generator in human design, and this type of design is notorious for starting things and not necessarily feeling the need to complete it. So if I'm just operating from my natural instinct, it's not really about methodically plodding along, but simply allowing that inner excitement and that pull and that inner drive to take me in whatever direction it wants to go, however jarring it may seem. So it's all these characteristics that simply flow with a natural state of who you already are. It's that space of not trying to control and simply allowing things to emerge, essentially. So there's other time periods where this has happened. Say when I went on my first round the world trip. At that point, I've already done Vipassana. I'd been through numerous jobs. I completed the degree, and now I'm living in my dream city at the time, Vancouver, and I'm feeling like, wow, I'm like young adult just enjoying, the city, having moved from like a smaller town and being more in like a suburban area for most of my life, and especially like even going through my early 20s, still living at home while in university, and now I get to be like in the big city, so to speak, and like a high rise in the Harvard downtown, yay! And I'm like enrolled in a life coaching program, right? And there was something also calling me to more. It was like calling, and it was something that I didn't didn't necessarily articulate, but it was an undeniable inner feeling, and it was pulling me to like expansion. It was pulling me to possibility, to opening up and being playing on a bigger scale, essentially. So what it really pulled me to was world travel. It was this inner voice that said go to Toronto, and it had no logical reason to listen to that voice, but lo and behold, I heeded its direction, and I essentially took a one-way 4-day train ride from Vancouver to Toronto, and that one thing led to Barcelona, to Morocco, and on and on and on for like almost 2 years of solo world travel. So the thing is that, even actually before I went on that trip, I was at home and, in like my childhood home and like all my stuff. And I was like, you know what? I'm really feeling like all the stuff that I'm so used to, like surrounded with, I'm like, it feels so heavy. It's like I need to declutter, I need to let go. And I did like a big, like deep cleaning, like let it, like just a lot of things that I was holding on, like all the magazines I ever had when I was like a teenager, a lot of the collections I had, like I still had like stuffed animals from my childhood, for crying out loud. I had like all my Kinder Surprise toys, like who knows? I had like collections of like all my nail polish, but I just have like all my crafts and arts and like board games and just the abundance and amount of stuff that I'm so grateful for, that obviously I have all this nourishment and plentiful of all these things I got to experience and engage in. It's like at some point you know you want more. So I realized that I was also keeping like a lot of my university coursework, like a lot of the textbooks and like the binders and papers, like all that stuff was just like in storage essentially. And I was like, oh my goodness, like I need to just like move on in a sense. Like I need to, yeah, okay, it's nice. It's sentiment, keeping things for sentimental purposes does have a purpose in itself. And there are actually things that I would probably, keep in some way, but at the same time, it was this inner purge, like this clearing. It was this rearranging and shifting of my life where I was like, I am really feeling this need for more. And this is really about the same time that I started going out for more bike rides. Like I started, instead of being like driven everywhere or like just, being more sedentary, I actually started pushing myself to go for bike rides, like longer bike rides, like 2, 3 hours a day through the river valleys, like more out in nature. And I started like, you know, being more of an outdoorsy person, really. Like, I don't know if I'd ever really called myself an outdoorsy person, especially when I was in university. I've always been more like most of my activities were more indoors and sedentary, or even just definitely not necessarily outdoorsy. We always had like a backyard and a garden as a child. So, like, my outdoors was, very much in a bubble and just at home essentially. But I never been that person to like go for bike rides, especially alone per se, or for hours on end. Like as a kid, I always just like biked around the neighborhood or like with friends and this, like short distances. But I never really been someone who considered myself fit. Even in gym class, I'd always be that person who, was like making a joke of things or standing on the sidelines or just chatting with people more than actually doing the gym activity, right? So I've never been particularly athletic. But around this time, I started like expanding my, you could call it like my aura, like my vibrational field, my energetic field. And that a lot of times happens when you, through exercise, like fitness, it definitely elevates your spirit, it elevates your not just your mood, but like energy wise, like your sense of well-being feeds into your vitality, that also feeds into the health of your heart, and not just health on a heart on of your heart on a functional level, but on this attraction level, like this magnetic field of energy where it's like that certain appreciation and gratitude and joy and a feeling of abundance and fulfillment these higher quality values all stem from that feeling of energetic expansion that comes through, say, exercise when you're boosting your levels of like, oh, whatever the chemical is, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, whatever the chemical is that gets boosted when you're exercising. These not only lift your mood, they actually expand your energetic field because you're in this glow. You're almost like radiating. You're in radiance. You're stunning. It's like you're literally almost like glowing. You feel like in a way untouchable. Have you ever had like a really great workout session or you went for like a 2-hour bike ride and you're like in nature and suddenly you're like not even upset about anything anymore. You're just like, all is good, all is well. I feel so dang healthy right now. I feel so like such an influx of well-being. So this was like like a shift around my mid-20s where I started becoming a lot more outdoorsy and suddenly like the lifestyle where it was like meshing with this, like a life coaching and I was still in Vancouver. I was like in high rise and at the time I was wearing like cardigans and like preppy dresses and like my ankle boots and I wasn't necessarily um you know I was still very much in a bubble and really what this expanding my energetic state in terms of through physical fitness and even just that level of gratitude and appreciation, it was it was it was expanding my container for more. It was almost like making me a receiver to attract more. So you can see how now my lifestyle was not really matching the energetic expansion that was occurring on that energetic level essentially. Because through all of these things that I was living and experiencing, now after say prior things, say I had gone through a 10-day vipassana meditation retreat that really got me to move more from my head into my heart and my spirit and moving more with from a place of alignment and ease. And I think that really is what also prompted and led to me becoming like letting go of some physical clutter and things from that I've been holding on to for like as long as like my childhood or teenage years, even the university era, and really like rearranging and reshifting those inner patterns. And then moving into more extroverted activities, right? I started going out and about more in terms of being out in nature rather than wanting to just simply hibernate at home or be do things that are felt more easy at the time, which was, just going about everywhere, like whether in a vehicle or something, um, instead of like actually powering like a bicycle and like exerting, like having that physical fitness essentially. It takes more energy. And I would be doing this like daily, essentially, even when I didn't want to. Like a lot of times, I didn't feel like going out, and a lot of times it's overcoming this inertia. Sometimes you're in within the four walls of your home, and you're like, oh, I don't want to go out. But once you actually get out in like open air, you're suddenly like you just have it's like a different mentality. It's like, oh dang, well now I don't want to go back in. Like I'm good just being out here and I'm going to go on my bike ride. So sometimes it's just overcoming that inertia, like putting on your shoes on, getting out the door of the four walls, go getting your bike out of the garage or wherever you tuck it away and then just essentially once you're out and about, suddenly it's like your spirit is soaring. It's like, oh, well, there we go. So sometimes it's just overcoming that initial inertia that then aligns you with what your soul is already pulling you to, like where your soul is already headed, essentially. And so, through all these experiences, whether it was like the Vipassana that really expanded my being through moving from like that limited space of just being in my head or overanalyzing or overthinking too much to really listening and sitting still with myself and that silence that really honed in on like the extraneous noise and, you know, the crude nature that can sometimes be when you're not fine-tuned or honed in on the inner processes and like the visceral sensations within that might be influencing your thought patterns essentially. So it really kind of like calmed down my system, my sense of self, my mind, and got really clear on like what was important to me. And suddenly like a lot of the jobs and things, I was just like, I was not interested in doing so many things for quite a bit of time after that Vipassana. It was like I just lost interest in not in a depressed way, but I think just in this way that was suddenly like I was clarifying more like, okay, what are the higher order values that really do matter to me? Like what are the peak experiences, so to speak? Where are like the high level, high energy experiences? I don't want to just be going to a job day in, day out or doing low level activity that really doesn't fulfill my soul. It's almost like this. The reason why I didn't really enjoy university was that it didn't feel aligned with my soul. It didn't feel like a calling. And so at that time, it was like all these different experiences I'd had, whether it was emerging from university, cycling through various jobs, and then moving into Vipassana, and then, allowing myself to do more independent activities and going about out and about more on my own and expanding more in terms of energetics and my fitness and my health and my overall vitality, like just that sense of physical strength in my body, essentially. It's like this sense that, wow, I'm like my stamina, like I got my stamina quite high. Like I could go for like 3-hour bike rides at one point in my 20s. And even now I feel like I do have a certain level of physical fitness, but I don't necessarily bike as much as I used to. I mean, I don't bike nearly as much as I did at that period of time in my life. But that's because life is always calling to you to more. It's always calling you to whatever you are evolving into next. So when at the time that in early 2015, moving into 2016, which is where the round the world trip started, I started kind of like purging a lot of things that was no longer really serving me, like a lot of physical possessions, lightening up in that way. I started almost expand. I noticed that I started loosening up on, say, this idea of like not only control but like abundance. I allowed a more abundance flowing in the way of like I'm releasing things and allowing in the new. And I also allowed myself to start spending more on like things. So like I would buy like a t-shirt for like $50 rather than just like I'd always just be like I'm going to spend the least amount for like just clothing because whatever, I don't care that much. And I started being like, wow, if I really like this shirt and it costs $50, I'm spending $50 on this shirt because I love it. It's like, I don't care about the price point, right? And this was like around 2013, 2014 that I really started doing this, 2012 even. And it really kind of, I would buy like notebooks that cost like $30 rather than just like the $10 or the $2 notebook or something. So I really started like expanding like that feeling of like feel good. It's like, wow, I really love the material of this. And I really just something about it, like the color, the way it was crafted, the craftsmanship of it, how it was made. It was just made really well, right? Or it just really suits my taste and just makes me feel so good and luxurious and pampered. So I started saying yes to those things more and almost like loosening my grip on that like tightness of control or being like, or almost like trying to keep yourself under a certain limit, being like, I'm only spending this amount of money on a shirt. Like I would never spend more than maybe 15 to 20 bucks on a shirt because I'm like, okay, that's just silly. But at this point, I'm like, you know what? It's not really about the amount of money. It's about the quality. It's about it's how it makes you feel. It's about the energy of it. Like I started seeing things so much more in terms of energy rather than just the thing itself. So this was a major shift at the point at that time. And this is where it's like life is always calling you to more. If you can't just stay the same because at some point you will feel that pull. And if you ever try to go back, it's like that saying that a container expanded to greater dimensions cannot ever go back to its former dimensions. It's like once you've been stretched beyond what you're used to, you don't you don't like fold back and like contract again. It's like you literally you have your mindset is expanded, your energetic self is expanded. It's you cannot unsee what you've already seen essentially. You can't necessarily contract your energetic state. So at this point, I'm like outgrowing my conditions of like wherever I was like just living in, I was living in the same country I was born in. I might be in a different province, but I'm still essentially in the same country. I'm still like just doing ordinary like things like day to day. Okay, I'm like living in a fun city and like a high rise and I'm like in this coaching program and like it's a little bit different than like say going to university or just living at home or just being inoculated in like the suburbs and whatnot. And each one has its like merits and it's like fun for different stages of your life and whatever you're called to and for different stages of your growth and ascension. But at this point it's like I'm getting this call that I'm like being pulled to grow even more. And so this was really where that round the world trip started. It doesn't start from me logically thinking or planning or strategically researching things. It came from me just simply living and living as I felt called to live. And my energetic state almost like reflecting those activities, and essentially that energetic shift and that energetic growth that occurs beneath the in underneath the 3D. It's like these things going on behind the scenes that suddenly like this path is converging with this. It's calling me to like, why like this go to Toronto. It's so specific. It's like this path is emerging in congruence with who I'm emerging as based on my energetic. So that's why they say it's like, your energy is like attracting what you bring in the physical. At this point, even though I had attracted this to me, say at this point in time in like 2015 to 2016, I'm now like living in downtown Vancouver. I'm like in a high rise. Okay, there's a certain level of fulfillment and abundance there, and I'm going in this life coaching program. Things feel aligned in some way, but also, there's an energetic component where it's like, okay, but you're also outgrowing this. There's also an element of this energetic shift that you're becoming bigger than in a way. And this is where I felt that mismatch at some point, they would say like once you are available to receive more, when you're already in a high energetic frequency state, you're often called to even more because your vessel is open in a sense. It's like your gratitude is like a lightning rod to attract more abundance. So that's essentially what happened. So at this point, I'm like getting this feeling like things feel already like I'm wading through molasses. Like feeling a little bit like, okay, I've already seen everything in the city. Like I started feeling like I'm just going through the motions day in, day out, even though like on the surface it feels like, wow, isn't this like what it's almost like a dream life for me in some way? Living my dream city, just getting to study what I want to study this time around and just essentially just being a young adult, right, in my 20s. But somehow there was an energetic component that was shape shifting behind the scenes. It was like, I've done all this inner work, essentially, this energetic work where it's like I'm in a state of that my fitness is like so high, my sense of gratitude and appreciation, my sense of abundance, where I'm allowing in more, where I'm not constricting the flow of energy, where I've released some old thoughts and mindset and practices, and I've I've moved myself into a new place and a new state, and I'm literally just living a different life than say when I was like just 17 embarking on in university. And at that time I was living at home and I was studying in a program that I always questioned because I was just paid for me and I didn't really feel like I chose it, and I didn't really feel like I was called to university right after high school and la di da di da, right? So it was like quite a shift from that period, but at the same time now I was being called to more. So it's this idea that life can't stay the same when your energy is shifting behind the scenes. That is when you will feel this mismatch in energy where your energetic state is already living in some other realm, but your physical state has yet to catch up. And that is the moment when you know that you cannot just stay you cannot just the physical cannot just remain the same. I couldn't have just stayed in Vancouver. I couldn't have just denied that pull to go on the train to Vancouver to Toronto to explore that. I couldn't just deny that pull that okay, I need to withdraw from this coaching program for whatever reason that I'm feeling confined or stifled for some reason just living in this city. And, a city that once felt very like, it's still like a very international, like, Vancouver is still one of my favorite cities, but it's one of those like just living in it, just doing the same old things, that started feeling very stifling and confining to me. And that's when it's like, I can't just stay the same. I couldn't just say, okay, let me just continue doing this. In a way, that's what I did when I was 17. I just continued going to day in, day out to that university program. And that's where that dissonance came in, that energetic dissonance, where my spirit was already growing and energetically being called to much more. But I was just kind of staying in that one place and, just for the sake of completion, just doing it, right? So it's honoring your voice within. It's knowing when it's time to to shift your physical and take the action that you know you're being called to, even when it doesn't make sense, because your energetic self is already living in that reality, is already there. So these are some signs that maybe your life is no longer a match for your energetic state. It's like you'll start to feel confining, you'll start to feel too small, you'll start to feel a bit not quite right. Like it's you feel a certain sense of being stifled. So this is what it's like to outgrow different versions of yourself. There's not just any one version of yourself. You're always growing, you're always evolving. So it's like letting go and trusting that process and releasing any fear, essentially, going with faith over fear and listening to that voice, because when you stay too long in one place, as happened to me when I was, went to through my university degree just after high school, it was that feeling of discomfort from that I wasn't really growing in the ways that my soul was calling me to grow. So it's that quiet knowing, it's that subtle inner nudge, it's that whisper that it was like, go to Toronto. And it was like this life coaching program, this city I'm living in, this high rise apartment, whatnot. These things are no longer it anymore. Like, I am being called to more. And that is what happened. That was the start that led to the start of my round the world trip journey. And it's that sacred moment, really. It's like really, it wasn't even about the round the world trip. Even though that trip was like, on the surface, it's like, okay, all these physical things, la la la. But it really comes down to that one pivotal sacred moment, that moment when I said yes to myself, when I said yes to that impulse, that energetic shift that within me was calling me to say yes. And, you know, that maybe the life you're living is starting to feel small in some way. It felt like a bigger life compared to the smaller hometown and where what I had just been living prior, to expand more into like this new city on a bigger scale and now like studying what I want to study and having more of that independence, whatnot. But at some point, what once felt big starts to feel small. And that is that moment where you have a new decision to make, to expand with your inner being and that energetic self that's already outgrown, or there is no alternative, essentially. You cannot go back. So, this is just a reminder that when you get that inner nudge, that inner whisper, you need to leap. You need to say yes. You need to allow that space to grow into it and match the energetic self that is already playing out. And your physical world is quickly going to match up with that. So, this is episode 33 of Let the Story Write Itself.